Most people spend their entire lives trying to build a number. Not a life, a number. The number sits in an account somewhere. It slowly grows over the years. Every time it gets bigger, it feels like progress. It feels like safety. It feels like winning. But something strange happens along the way. The number keeps growing, and life keeps shrinking. Years pass. Opportunities pass. People change. Bodies change. And before anyone really stops to question it, the entire goal quietly becomes protecting the number instead of living the life it was supposed to support. A lot of people don't realize how common this is. There are millions of people who spent 40 years saving carefully, doing everything the financial system told them to do. They worked late, skipped trips, delayed experiences, and told themselves that one day it would all be worth it. One day they would finally have the freedom to live. But when that day finally arrives, something unexpected happens. They don't suddenly become different people. The habits they built over decades stay exactly the same. They still hesitate to spend. They still worry about running out. They still feel uncomfortable watching the balance go down. So the money stays there, and the life that was supposed to happen later never fully happens. What makes this even more surprising is that many retirees don't actually run out of money. In fact, a large percentage pass away with significant savings still untouched. Money that could have funded experiences, memories, and time with people they loved simply remains in an account until the end. From a financial industry perspective, that looks like success. From a life perspective, it raises a very uncomfortable question. What exactly were all those years of sacrifice for? Imagine something for a moment. Picture receiving a very valuable gift card when you're young. It's loaded with a huge balance, enough to buy incredible experiences. You carry it around with you everywhere. You protect it carefully. You check the balance often. Every year you even add a little more to it. Decades pass, and the balance becomes enormous. But there's a detail hidden in the fine print. The card never expires. But your ability to enjoy what it buys slowly does. At first, the menu is huge. Everything is available. Adventure, travel, late nights with friends, spontaneous road trips, physical challenges, time with young children, long conversations with parents who are still around. But each year a few items quietly disappear from the menu. Your needs don't feel the same. Friends get busy. Parents get older. Kids grow up. Energy levels change. The card still has plenty of value, but the list of things it can buy keeps getting smaller. Most people never think about life this way, but in many ways this is exactly how time works. The problem isn't money. The problem is timing. There's a concept that doesn't get talked about nearly enough when people discuss finances. Memories have returns, not financial returns, emotional returns, experiential returns. And the earlier those memories happen, the longer those returns compound. Think about something simple, a trip you took with close friends when you were younger. You probably remember the small moments more than anything else. The random conversations, the unexpected problems that turned into funny stories, the feeling of discovering something new together. Those memories don't just exist once. They come back again and again. You remember them years later. You laugh about them at reunions. You tell those stories to new people in your life. Sometimes they randomly show up in your mind on an ordinary afternoon. The experience keeps paying you back long after the money is gone. Now imagine the same trip happening 40 years later. It can still be enjoyable. But the runway is shorter. The memories have less time to echo through your life. That's the hidden math most people ignore. Just like money compounds over time, experiences compound too. But experiences only compound if they actually happen. A trip that stays on a bucket list doesn't generate any return. A dream that stays in a folder on your computer produces zero memories. You can't earn emotional dividends on something you never did. One of the most fascinating things behavioral researchers have found over the years is that people consistently report more lasting happiness from experiences than from possessions. New things feel exciting in the beginning, but they quickly become normal. A new car becomes just transportation. A bigger television becomes just another screen in the room. But experiences age differently. They often become more valuable over time. They turn into stories. They shape how we remember entire periods of our lives. And yet the way society teaches people to plan their finances almost completely ignores this. Most financial advice focuses on accumulation. Save more. Invest more. Grow the number. But very little attention is given to how and when that money should actually be used, because spending money strategically is much harder to model than saving it. There's also a psychological factor involved. Saving money creates a feeling of control. Watching an account grow triggers a reward response in the brain. It feels good. Spending, even when it's completely reasonable, can feel like loss. Even wealthy people experience this. Someone can have far more money than they realistically need and still feel anxious about using it. The brain doesn't easily distinguish between spending responsibly and running out. Both can feel similar emotionally. That's why many people continue saving long after they've already secured their future. At that point, they're no longer saving for security. They're saving out of habit. Another part of the puzzle is that life doesn't stay the same across decades. Every stage of life comes with different abilities and different opportunities. When you're younger, your body has more energy. Your schedule can be more flexible. Adventure feels easier. Later in life, many people still enjoy experiences, but the type of experiences often changes. Comfort becomes more appealing than intensity. A relaxed vacation may replace backpacking through mountains. A scenic cruise may replace a demanding hike. And eventually there comes a stage where health becomes the dominant factor in most decisions. At that point, the list of possible experiences narrows significantly. What's interesting is that traditional retirement planning often unlocks spending right when this transition is already beginning. People spend their most energetic decades building financial security, then finally allow themselves to enjoy life when their capacity for certain experiences has already started declining. Again, this doesn't mean retirement can't be wonderful. Many people absolutely enjoy those years. But it does highlight an important imbalance. Some experiences simply belong to earlier chapters of life. Think about parents with young children. There's a relatively short window when kids are still excited to travel with their family, when they still want to spend long stretches of time together, when shared adventures shape how they remember childhood. Eventually, kids grow into teenagers, then adults. Their own lives begin to pull them in different directions. The opportunity for those specific family experiences quietly fades. No amount of money later can recreate that exact window. This is something many people realize only after it has already passed. They spent years telling themselves that they would make up for lost time later. But later turned out to be a completely different stage of life. This brings up a deeper question that people rarely ask directly. How much money is actually enough? There's a difference between financial security and endless accumulation. Security means having enough to handle the future with confidence. Accumulation without purpose is something else entirely. Many psychologists who study financial behavior describe a pattern where people become extremely focused on protecting wealth even after it no longer serves a clear purpose. The act of saving becomes its own goal, not because more money will meaningfully improve life, but because reducing the balance feels uncomfortable. This mindset can quietly shift a person's priorities over time. Years get traded for larger numbers. Experiences get postponed indefinitely. Relationships sometimes get less attention than they deserve, all in the name of a future that keeps moving further away. The truth is that money is only a tool, a very powerful tool, but still just a tool. Its entire purpose is to help create a meaningful life, not to become the final objective. There's also another important dimension people often overlook. When money is given at the right moment, it can dramatically change someone's path. Helping a young adult eliminate debt, start a business, or buy their first home can alter the trajectory of their life. The same amount given decades later may simply increase comfort. Still appreciated, but far less transformative. Timing changes impact. That principle applies not only to giving, but also to personal experiences. The earlier meaningful moments happen, the longer they continue influencing the rest of life. A conversation with a parent while they're still healthy. A trip taken before schedules become impossible to coordinate. A season spent truly present with children. These moments create emotional anchors that last for decades. None of this means people should stop saving. Financial stability is incredibly important, but the real goal should be balance. Protect the future, while still living the present. Use money deliberately rather than automatically storing it forever. Because time and money follow very different rules. Money can grow back. Lost time never does. And the most valuable opportunities in life rarely send reminders before they disappear. One day you look around and realize that the stage of life you were planning for has quietly changed. Kids are older. Parents are gone. Friends have moved away. Energy levels are different. The account balance might be impressive, but some items have permanently disappeared from the menu. The truth is that a meaningful life isn't built only at the end. It's built continuously. Through experiences, through shared moments, through decisions made while the opportunity still exists. And perhaps the most important realization is this. We don't actually want to die with the largest possible number. We want to reach the end, knowing we fully used the time we were given. Not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but intentionally. Money should flow through life creating memories, relationships, and moments that shape who we become. Because at the end of the story, the number in the account isn't what people talk about. They talk about where you went, what you experienced, who you were there with, and the stories that still make people smile years later. Those are the true dividends of a life well spent. Most people assume there will always be more time. More time to travel, more time to slow down, more time to finally enjoy everything they spent decades working for. But time doesn't move the way we imagine it does. When you're young, the future feels wide open. It feels like a giant stretch of road with endless exits where you can stop and experience something new whenever you want. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels like it has a deadline. But the truth is that life quietly organizes itself into windows. Windows for energy. Windows for relationships. Windows for certain kinds of experiences that simply don't exist forever. And the strange part is that most people don't notice those windows closing while they're busy preparing for a future version of life that may never arrive the way they imagine it. Think about the way we're taught to think about money. From the moment people start working, the message is clear. Save as much as possible, invest consistently, and wait patiently for the day when the numbers are finally big enough. That strategy works extremely well mathematically. Compound interest rewards patience. Time in the market is powerful. But there's another kind of compounding that rarely gets discussed in financial conversations. Life experiences compound too, not financially, emotionally, psychologically, socially. The earlier meaningful experiences happen, the longer they echo through the rest of life. A memory created in your 20s can live with you for 50 or 60 years. You might tell the story hundreds of times. It becomes part of your identity, part of the way you explain your life to others, part of how your family remembers certain chapters of your shared history. That's an incredible return. But here's the catch. Experiences only compound if they actually happen. An experience that stays in the someday category produces nothing, no stories, no memories, no emotional returns. Just a quiet idea that eventually fades away. And most people have more of those postponed experiences than they realize. Trips they always planned to take, projects they wanted to start, moments they intended to share with people who mattered to them. They told themselves they would do it after the next promotion, after the next milestone, after the savings account reached a certain number, after life slowed down. But life rarely slows down on its own. Instead, it keeps moving. Children grow up, parents grow older, friends move away, careers become more demanding, and the version of the experience you originally imagined slowly becomes impossible to recreate. There's something deeply ironic about the way modern life works. We spend our healthiest, most energetic decades accumulating the resources that would allow us to live fully. But we often postpone actually living until those decades have already passed. It's not because people are foolish. It's because the system rewards accumulation. Every financial chart celebrates the upward slope. Every conversation about wealth focuses on the final total. Very few conversations focus on how effectively that money was converted into a meaningful life. And that difference matters more than most people realize. Because when people reach the later stages of life, something surprising happens. Their desires often shrink. Not in a negative way, but naturally. The things that once seemed exciting may no longer feel as appealing. A challenging hike might feel exhausting. A long international trip might seem complicated. Late nights might lose their charm. The appetite for certain kinds of experiences fades. At the same time, health becomes a larger factor in everyday decisions. Energy is more limited. Recovery takes longer. The body becomes more selective about what it's willing to do. None of this means life becomes less meaningful. In many ways, it becomes deeper and more reflective. But it does mean that certain opportunities are best experienced earlier. And yet, traditional financial planning often encourages people to delay those experiences until retirement, until the moment when the account balance is finally large enough, until the moment when work is no longer required. But by then, the context of life has changed. Kids may already be building families of their own. Friends may be scattered across different cities. Parents may no longer be around to share those long postponed moments. The experiences you imagined decades earlier belong to a different chapter of life, a chapter that quietly ended while you were preparing for the next one. This doesn't mean saving is wrong. Saving is incredibly important. Financial stress can destroy freedom and peace of mind. Security matters. But there's a difference between protecting the future and endlessly postponing the present. The real challenge is balance, understanding which parts of life can wait and which parts cannot. Some opportunities can be postponed without much consequence. Others are tied to very specific seasons. Seasons defined by age, by relationships, by health, by the stage of life everyone around you happens to be in. And once those seasons pass, they rarely return in the same form. One of the most powerful ways to think about money is to see it as stored life energy. Every dollar represents hours of effort, attention, and time spent working. When you invest that energy wisely, it grows, but eventually it's meant to be converted back into life, into freedom, into experiences, into the moments that make the effort worthwhile. If that conversion never happens, the entire system loses its purpose. Money becomes something that was protected rather than something that was used. And when people reach the end of their lives, that difference becomes very clear. Very few people talk about the size of their retirement account. They talk about the moments that mattered, the places they went, the risks they took, the time they spent with people they loved, the stories that still make them laugh decades later. Those are the memories that define a life, and they are created in real time, not stored for later. There's also a subtle psychological shift that happens once people recognize this. They stop thinking only about how much money they can accumulate. They start thinking about how effectively they are converting resources into meaningful experiences. They begin asking better questions. Not just how much will this investment grow, but also what kind of life am I building along the way? Because in the end, wealth is not measured only by numbers. It's measured by freedom. Freedom to spend time where it matters. Freedom to be present with the people you care about. Freedom to explore the world while you still have the energy to do it. And freedom to look back one day without wondering why you waited so long to start living. Life doesn't ask for reckless decisions. It asks for awareness. Awareness that time moves quietly but relentlessly. Awareness that certain opportunities have invisible deadlines. Awareness that the most valuable moments rarely happen automatically. They happen when someone decides that the present is worth investing in. And perhaps the most important realization is this: the goal isn't to finish life with the highest possible number. The goal is to reach the end knowing that you used your time wisely, that you created memories that will echo through the lives of the people you love, that you experienced the world while you had the chance. Because one day, the account balances won't matter anymore, but the stories will still be there, and those stories are the true measure of a life fully lived. Another thing most people don't realize is how quietly life changes around them while they're focused on building financial security. At first, the trade-offs feel small. You skip one trip because work is busy. You delay a vacation because the bonus might be bigger next year. You decide not to take time off because the project deadline is approaching. None of these decisions seem dramatic on their own. They feel responsible, practical, even admirable. But when those small decisions repeat year after year, they slowly shape an entire life. Years later, you look back and realize that the life you were planning to enjoy someday kept getting pushed further into the future, not intentionally, just gradually. The strange thing about time is that it rarely feels urgent while it's happening. Days feel long, but years move incredibly fast. A decade can pass before someone really stops and asks themselves what they've actually been doing with their life outside of work and saving. This is why so many people feel a quiet sense of surprise when they reach their 50s or 60s. They did everything correctly. They followed the responsible path. They built stability. They avoided risk. But they also postponed many of the experiences that once felt important. And by the time they finally feel free enough to pursue them, the context has changed. Friends have different responsibilities. Family members may no longer be available. Energy levels are different. The world they imagined enjoying later isn't quite the same world that exists now. Again, this isn't meant to sound pessimistic. Life can be fulfilling at every stage. But it does highlight something important about the way we think about planning. Most people plan their finances very carefully. Few people plan their experiences with the same level of intention. They assume meaningful moments will just happen naturally once money is no longer a concern. But meaningful experiences rarely appear automatically. They require time, attention, and often a deliberate decision to prioritize them while the opportunity still exists. Think about the people you remember most vividly from your own life. Teachers, friends, family members. Chances are the moments you remember with them are not ordinary routine days. They're specific experiences, trips, conversations, unexpected adventures. Times when everyone stepped outside their normal routine and did something memorable together. Those moments didn't happen because someone waited until the perfect financial milestone. They happened because someone decided that the moment itself mattered. There's also an important difference between comfort and fulfillment. Financial security creates comfort. It removes stress. It provides stability. That's incredibly valuable. But fulfillment usually comes from experiences, relationships, and growth. Those things don't come from watching a number increase. They come from living through situations that create stories, emotions, and connections. A person could technically reach the end of their life with enormous financial success and still feel that something was missing. Not because money is bad, but because money was never meant to be the final goal. It was supposed to support the real goal. And the real goal is a life filled with meaningful experiences and relationships. One helpful way to think about this is to imagine looking back from the future. Imagine yourself many decades from now, reflecting on the life you lived. Which moments will stand out? Will it be the exact size of your investment account at a particular age? Or will it be the trips you took, the people you helped, the risks you dared to take, and the memories you created with people who mattered to you? Most people already know the answer to that question, but knowing something and living according to it are two different things. That's where intentional decisions become important. It doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It means recognizing that life has different phases, and each phase offers opportunities that may not exist later. The experiences that define your 20s will not be the same as the experiences that define your 40s. The opportunities available when your children are young are different from those available when they're adults. The activities your body can handle in your 30s may not feel the same in your 70s. Every stage has its own menu, and every menu slowly changes over time. Understanding this doesn't mean trying to rush through life. It means becoming more aware of which experiences belong to the present moment. Because when people look back at the end of their lives, they rarely regret the moments they chose to live fully. What they regret are the experiences they kept postponing, the trips they never took, the conversations they never had, the time they assumed would always be available later. Those missed moments are the only things that truly disappear forever. Money can recover, investments can grow again, opportunities to earn can return, but time moves in one direction. Once a chapter of life closes, it never reopens in exactly the same way. That's why the most balanced approach to life isn't extreme saving or reckless spending. It's thoughtful living. Protect your future. Build security, but also recognize when a moment deserves to be experienced instead of postponed. Because life isn't something that begins after the savings goal is reached. Life is happening the entire time. Every ordinary week contains moments that could become lasting memories. Every year offers chances to deepen relationships and explore something new. And when someone learns to balance preparation for the future with appreciation for the present, something interesting happens. The number in the account stops being the center of the story. It becomes a supporting character, a tool that helps create the life you actually want to live. And that's when money finally starts serving its true purpose, not as something to protect endlessly, but as something that helps transform time into meaningful experiences. Because at the end of the journey, what people remember isn't the balance that stayed in the account. They remember the life that balance helped create.